Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another YouTube video. Also, I know I said I would do the Souls video this week, but I forgot. That's it. I forgot again. And I'm most likely going to make a video on a certain recent movie that I want to talk about, so don't get your hopes up. I can't promise anything. Anyways, I realized I've never drawn the main villain of my story on this channel, so everyone say hello to Morgan, the very definition of gaslight gatekeep girl boss. And I would say she also encompasses mansplain, manipulate, man word I can't say on YouTube, but that's taken by MIINNE, so she can't have everything. Anyway, with that interesting intro out of the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to get a weekly update on how many things I forget, and please enjoy the video. So, Morgan isn't a human or a daemon, she's a shapeshifter and assumably one of the last of her kind. Her real form is the massive monster behind her that I didn't fully draw. And the reason I didn't fully draw it was totally because I wanted it to have the cool transition effect thingy-mabob I got going on in the back with the spikes. And totally not because I haven't figured out its anatomy yet and wasn't bothered to do it before this video. Anyway, and her human form is stolen from an old friend who was a man, but she wanted to serve. In all honesty, she sometimes goes full man on it, and I was gonna draw her male form as well, but I drew the monster first, and then I decided that two people wouldn't fit in front of it without it looking goofy, so he's sitting in the corner. Morgan doesn't really understand how humans and daemons work because shapeshifters are usually solitary creatures and don't interact with others that aren't in their pact. So now she spends most of her time researching them, and through this came to the conclusion that because humans only live for a fraction of the time as daemons and shapeshifters, that they matter less, and she can do whatever she wants to them for science. This is why parental guardians are important at a young age. Anyway, of course, this doesn't apply to her super duper bestest friend and semi-romantic assistant and secretary, MIINNE. Her excuse being he'll live longer because of his pact with a deity, and also who's she supposed to grab to ballroom dance when something goes right, and who's she supposed to mentally torment on the daily. So, where did Morgan come from? Well, no one knows. Even if you were to ask her when she's in a good mood and not liable to kill an innocent scientist, she'd tell you she doesn't remember. And she grew up in the mountains. However, we don't live in their world, so I know and I can tell you. And the reason I know is because I found out, not because I wrote it. We've already, gone over the fact that I can't write, so I'm illiterate. So Morgan lived in the mountains, like she said, and being one of the last of her kind, she was very much alone. Also because she may or may not have been kicked out of her pact for being annoying and a little violent when she's in a silly, goofy mood. However, there was a village at the bottom of the mountain, and that village, as villages do, made up many rumors of a monster in the mountains, and because of this, Morgan faces much abuse from random hikers when she's just trying to mind her damn business. So, eventually, a young man named Morgan, whoa, what? Trust me, the whole name thing will make sense eventually, from the village decides to check out this monster for himself, so he packs up and heads off, and eventually, after a lot of searching, comes across said monster sitting on a cliff and eating berries. Now, Morgan the shapeshifter, not the man, sees this man approaching and is like, oh for f***'s sake, not again, and gets ready to run and or throw him off the cliff. So you can imagine her surprise when he just sat down a few meters away from her and started eating some soup. So, curious as to why this man is not waving a pointy stick at her and shouting, she goes over to him and he's like, holy shit, I didn't think I'd get this far, and shoves the bowl of soup in her face because maybe she wants his soup, and it's actually quite scary when a creature twice your size starts walking towards you, Morgan the shapeshifter, not the man, decides, I can't wait to actually get to the point where I can separate them with names because this is really confusing, decides to take the strange piece of food, and turns out it's very good. So the two Morgans sit beside each other, the shapeshifter eating soup and the man being completely shocked at the fact that he's casually sitting beside a monster. So eventually it starts to get dark and the man decides to head back down the mountain, promising to come back up the next day. And he did. And the next day, and so on and so forth, only missing on his work days. And he, of course, brought more soup every day. Eventually, he decides he wants to communicate with the creature, instead of just awkwardly sitting in silence, and sometimes petting it or getting poked at by it. And you can imagine his surprise when the creature turns into him and starts speaking his language perfectly. I mean, you couldn't have told him or showed him, I guess, come on. He's He's trying his best. Now, Morgan the shapeshifter can speak in their monster form too, but she was in a silly, goofy mood, so after seeing this, Morgan the man is like, I have an amazing idea. You can live down in the village with me and make a bunch of friends, and we can come up here once a month, and you can be you. And the shapeshifter is like, that's a great idea. So Morgan the man is like, let's call you Arya and say you're my half-sister from another land. And okay, so for the sake of knowing the difference between Morgan the shapeshifter and the man, I'm going to call the shapeshifter Arya because that's, what he called her. And at this point, she didn't have the name Morgan, so Arya is like, you genius. So that's what they do, and it works. But soon, Arya starts to notice how popular Morgan was. Morgan, a musician and a blacksmith, was well known and very well liked. And although she tried, Arya couldn't make any close friends, and she got jealous. Very jealous. But she also loved Morgan, and this isn't one of the stories where they randomly decide to kill the person, so she impersonated him behind his back instead, and that worked. But Morgan began hearing of these things that he was doing and jokes he was making that he never did or made, and confused, he remarked on it to Arya in a joking way, and Arya was like, shit, he knows, and admitted to what she'd been doing. Now, Morgan was rightfully angry, but not overly so, since she hadn't been doing anything bad when she was him. He was more worried that she'd get caught, and no one likes being impersonated either, so he was a bit mad at that as well. So Arya promised never to do it again, and things went back to normal. Except this time, Morgan spent less time with her. Now, he didn't notice. As Arya would find out, the more friends you have, the less you notice the ratio of time you spend with them. But she noticed, and painfully so. Now she had no one to talk to unless she wanted to do awkward small talk, but who likes that? But all was not lost, because she still had their monthly trip up the mountain. So she packed all his bags and went and waited at the foot of the mountain, but he never came. She waited till it was dark, and he still didn't come. Now she was angry, so she left his hiking gear at the foot of the mountain and went up herself to stay the night. That night, there was also a hunting party in the mountains, and when they saw a monster, they obviously attacked it, and she got shot in the leg. Not injured other than that, but she had an arrow in her leg, so. Now, Morgan, after getting himself worried sick at the fact that Arya wasn't coming home yet, decided to finally go look for her, and eventually came to the foot of the mountain, where he saw his hiking gear and realized they were supposed to go up the mountain that night. Well, that day. It was night at this stage, but they were supposed to go up in the day. So he grabbed his gear, thought about getting his warmer coat, said, "Fuck it, we ball," and went up to look for her. Came across the same hunting party, who, when asked, said they hadn't seen his sister, but to be careful because there was a monster roaming about. But don't worry, they shot it, so it's not as fast or dangerous. So now Morgan's like, oh, shit, I really gotta find her now, and goes further up to the cliff that they normally go to. And despite freezing his ass off, after a lot of calling, he finds her in a cave by the cliff, nursing her now more holy leg. And goes over to her and wraps her leg up with his coat and helps her back to the village, apologizing on the way. Now, obviously, when you go up a snowy mountain in a thin coat and back down that snowy mountain with no coat, you're going to get sick. And Morgan gets very sick. I mean, his palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on his sweater already, mom spaghetti. Sorry. And eventually, I'm sorry this video is getting too long, I'm going to have to keep it short, so I'm not going to go into detail, but eventually he dies from this illness. And Arya is obviously upset and blames the entire village because in her eyes, it's their fault they grew apart, and Morgan forgot about going up the mountain. They shot her, which made her unable to descend the mountain alone, so Morgan had to come get her, leading to him getting sick. So Arya decides, F the village, and locks the armory, since Morgan was the one with the key. Then turns into him, since she's the only one aware of his death, at the time anyway, and this way she can go places she otherwise wouldn't be able to go, and begins picking off the higher-ups in said village. Rumors spread, but nothing gets done about it. The higher-ups are still sometimes seen walking around after all. Then, finally, she takes on her true form and ransacks the whole place. The village people obviously race to the armory, but find it locked, and when they go to find Morgan to get the key, they find his decomposing body in bed. And a few doors down, they find all of Arya's victims in a pile, separated for obvious reasons. well, separated from Morgan for obvious reasons. And Arya leaves no one in sight alive. Now, Morgan had a meeting about weapon trades and blacksmith stuff, and Arya, knowing this, decides to go in his place. Now, although surprised that their male blacksmith showed up as a woman, they just assumed it was a typo since all the other physical traits were correct, and when asked, the woman said her name was Morgan, so everything checks out. We're not going to look for ID, it's fine. Eventually, she would go on to build the capital city itself on the ruins of the village. The only things left untouched being Morgan, the man's house, and his smithy. If you go inside his house, you would find his body fully encased in glass, and somehow, miraculously, not decomposing and looking a lot better than it did 10 years prior. Anyway, that'll be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe for more. Bye-bye. The Irish word of the day, by the way, is sliabh, which means mountain.